beaten the British on secularism by having all communities in India have an equal vote, whereas I think it was still not till 1832 that the Catholic got the vote here in Britain. What we have also added is what the Americans have come to call affirmative action. That is, special privileges within our democracy for those who've been historically disadvantaged. They used to be called the untouchables. Now that's an absolutely illegal term in India. We call them the scheduled castes because they're enumerated in a schedule to the Constitution, and the scheduled tribes because these tribes too are so enumerated. And this very vibrant democracy has now gone through 15 general elections to Parliament and countless elections to our state assemblies. And I'm happy to say that on no occasion has the incumbent government refused to surrender power when they discovered that they no longer enjoyed the confidence of the people. So we've had numerous changes of government. We've had several, in fact, at the center in the decade of the 90s after Rajiv Gandhi. And in the States, of course, this has been going on for such a long time that we are now into an era of coalitions. And I do not think in my political life I'm going to see single party rule again in our country. And all these different manifestations of democracy have been managed with great smoothness, and we've never really had any problem of either political parties or the armed forces attempting to interfere in our democracy. At the same time, the development record of India is in some senses astonishing. For there are three major estimates of the rate of growth of India's GDP in the 50 years that led up to independence. The lowest is that by Thomas Madison, who estimates the rate of growth in the first 50 years of the 20th century as being approximately 0.73%. And the highest estimate is by an Indian statistician, Shiva Subramanian, who has taken that estimate up to 1.22%. But now that we are growing at 8 or 9% per annum, it means that we are adding within 1 year as much to the wealth of India as in the past it used to take up to 8 or 9 years to do. And that we have, the fact that we've survived this global economic downturn would appear to indicate that this high rate of growth is sustainable, and that therefore the projections being made of the size of the Indian economy overtaking every one of the member states of the European Union in about 15 years from now, and of the United States by 2050, seem realizable and practical goals. So in the light of this, we've done extremely well on both democracy and development. And democracy, I think, has been made possible largely because we've understood the plurality of our society and the immense diversity of a country which contains every race in the world, every color that human beings have possessed anywhere in the world, every religion in the world except, I think, Shamaism and Manichaeism. But apart from those two, every single religion is vibrantly represented in our country. We speak 28 recognized languages and 3,000 dialects. We dance every dance that we know, and we sing every song that we know. So that my provisional definition of an Indian is that an Indian is one who is not understood by other Indians, who doesn't understand other Indians, who doesn't belong to the same faith as another Indian, who doesn't wear the same clothes as another Indian, who wouldn't be seen dead eating the food that other Indians eat, who doesn't have the same faith, and yet he accepts that anybody who says that he's an Indian is an Indian. And that's all that we need to know when we are defining India's nationhood. And none of this would be possible if we did not combine democracy with secularism to ensure a unity which is definitively not based on uniformity, but is founded very strongly in not just tolerance of diversity, but in a celebration of diversity. So these are, I think, the upsides of the story of the evolution of India's nationhood over the last 60 years. And given that this is such a miraculous achievement, I think there would be some justification for Indians to rest back on their oars, say that we've discovered the answers, and that the sunlit uplands are the only kind of voyage that we could undertake. But I think it would be very, very dangerous for India and Indians to become complacent at this stage. For while we are the world's largest democracy, and while we have succeeded in also becoming the world's most representative democracy, ever since Rajiv Gandhi's constitutional reforms brought into existence 250,000 units of local self-government in India, to which we've elected 3.2 million representatives. There are more local government representatives elected in India than the population of New Zealand or Norway, or nearly about that much. And of these, 1.2 million are women. There are more elected women in India alone than in the rest of the world put together. And into the structure of our local government, we've ensured affirmative action in favor of the historically disadvantaged. So we've actually succeeded in converting the world's largest democracy into also the world's most representative democracy. But at the same time, we have put ourselves in danger of rendering it the world's weakest democracy. For while we have created these institutions of local self-government, we have very inadequately and non-uniformly empowered them to look after their own interests. We continue, by and large, to rely on the Indian bureaucracy to deliver development to the people. And I think over 63 years, we have successfully succeeded in demonstrating that India has the best bureaucrats in the world and the worst bureaucracy. We have totally failed in the job of delivering development because I think it was initially misconceived that development could be delivered to 1 billion people. The only way in which we can include the vast masses of India in the growth trajectory would be to empower them to secure by themselves and by their own effort their entitlements of public goods and public services. And that has been the signal failure of the Indian state over the last 6 decades. That we still are devising over 100 mutually exclusive and mutually inured silos, administrative silos, through which various schemes and projects and programs are delivered to the same set of beneficiaries. Whereas it would be far more efficient to simply send the functions, to simply devolve the functions, the finances, and the functionaries to the local level and let them get on with looking after their own primary education, looking after their own primary health requirements, looking after their own requirements of watershed development, minor irrigation, the public distribution system, indeed the 29 subjects that have been listed in the 11th schedule to the Constitution. And that is the big unfinished work. The consequence of continuing to rely on an instrument that was not devised for the purpose and which we have failed to adapt to the purpose is that back in 1994, India stood at 132 on the UN Human Development Index. And in the last 15 years, more than any other country in the world, we have increased our spending from the central budget alone on anti-poverty programs, rural welfare programs, and rural development programs by a factor of 15. In Indian rupee terms, it's gone up from 7,600 crore. I'm only talking of the central budget, from 7,600 crore in 1994-95 to the present allotment of 135,000 crore for these purposes. A 15 times increase in a period of 15 years. And what has been the outcome? In the last UN Human Development Index, we still stand at position 132. Quite clearly, Rajiv Gandhi was right when he said that about 85 paise in the rupee is being absorbed in administrative costs because our administrative machinery is so cumbersome, so self-regarding, that until the bureaucrats and their comprador NGOs set themselves up comfortably, they don't start beginning to deliver development. And if only 15 paise in the rupee is reaching the people, then you can see why despite this humongous increase in financial